Hey, everybody. Good morning, darlings. How are you? And, hey. Yes, Justin wanted to be rather silly on the title this morning, and I gave him permission to do so. So, there's your morning. Your morning happy. Your morning Family Guy reference. I just, man, there are parts of that show I like, and there are parts of that show that I could just definitely just toss out the window and never miss again, and never miss the brain cells that I wasted watching them. But anyway, yes, hi, Anki, and Margaret, and Zeditorium, and Miss Nymph, and H.M. Rodog, and Rex, and Numbat, and Daffodweir, and Sharky, and Sethany, and Nomad Zeke. Yo. How was everyone this morning? I hope you're lovely. As lovely as possible. Kiri's crashed out. I was afraid because yesterday a present arrived for Kiri in the mail that I had ordered on Amazon, which is a package of squeaky balls. And David had never experienced. David has never experienced a dog. Like his mom was allergic, so he didn't grow up with animals at all. So Kiri is his first living experience with a dog, and he had not been exposed to the happy dog sitting there and squeaking the squeaky ball. So that was what I found last night. But she came in this morning to the office and she pounced on her squeaky ball and squeaked it. And I'm like, oh no, is this going to be a thing during the stream? So, but now she is taking her morning nap, so we're safe. We're safe from the squeaky ball for the moment. We're getting Blight Fang. Hey, that's a nice big project, Margaret. Romper room, yes. Oh, cold front, raining. Wow. Fuel pike coffee and spite like normal. Oh, but Nomad Zeke, I don't see any spite from you. You're normally so lovable. You're so nice on here. I don't believe in that spite. I think it's fictitious spite. Hey, Frodo, thank you for the sub. I'm gonna have to make a note of that because Justin has abandoned us this morning. He has a very important ReaperCon meeting, so he is not here. So let me make a little sub tally. Subs 1. But we're tracking our subs so that we can build up to another AMA. And if we run out of AMA questions, it'll be Anne's choice. But yeah, so yeah, happy puppy. Kiri was very happy last night. Hello, Brenner. No, Justin. He will pop in toward the end of the stream. He just has to go down and be in the Eternal ReaperCon meeting. And I remember how those used to be. Like, they start and they never end. So he came up to push the button. And he will be back at the end so that we will raid somebody and have some fun. But for now, you're all stuck with me. So if there's a problem with the stream, I have to text him panically and hope he looks at his phone. Hey, Xanatorium! Yay! Thank you for the resub. Wow, 11 months. It's almost your year-anniversary. I'm gonna make a hashtag for you. Boop. Little hash mark. Yeah. Yes, I'm capable of streaming without him. Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's awesome. Let's just go over minicam. Let me deactivate my pro tips intro. Yeah, I remembered. All by myself. Didn't need Numbat to remind me. It's been a fun almost year. I know, right? It's so weird to think about how long I've been doing this. Because it has been very long. I think we did start the first toolbox with the Dance of Death last year, spring. So it's been a while. All right, so let's get to some loot painting. Because I thought today, I was looking at Mr. I like to, when I do these models, when I like grab random models to do a random thing on, I really like to use them for more than one demo. So I thought that I would we were too much palette in this frame, darn it. And there's not enough cam. There, we'll get that. We'll put this up here and we will do, oh, nope, it still wants my palette. Fine, no palette for you, Cam. You will be forced to focus on this dude if it's the last thing I do. It is just being temperamental this morning. Come on, camera. There we go. Much better. Excellent. So yeah, I thought I would do some wood grain because it's fun. And there's a couple different colors that I use for wood. Let me see if I have some linen white down here somewhere. If I don't, I've got something that's similar. Creamy ivory might work. Bleached linen might work. Yeah, those will work. All right, so I have 2 different wood recipes. The one of them I've been playing with for a very long time, and I'm very confident of it. And the other one is more for newer or fresher wood, like if his guitar was well cared for. Oh, a chip! Thank you for the sub. I'll mark down another one. I'm gonna have a whole bunch of subs to report to Justin when he comes back up, when he emerges from the depths of the ReaperCon meeting room. Yes. So there we go. Awesome. Thank you for the painting big spam. Alrighty, now I can finally bring my palette back into frame. So let's do my normal one, which I usually use for more worn wood, although, and you, certainly the other option, the standard option in MSP Core is the wood triad, right? We've got a shield brown, driftwood brown, and wood stain brown, right? And so those work very well for this sort of thing. I use it a lot for the backs of shields. The reason they work is that, obviously wood that's been cut and that hasn't been like oiled and lacquered is going to fade, right? It's going to get a little gray. It's going to get a little bit, it's going to lose some of its luster. So driftwood is a fantastic kind of grayed out brown that's lighter. It's really good for those faded wood effects, which is why we called it driftwood brown. I like these days, if I want a really warm color, I'll actually go with russet brown instead of shield, and I'll mix some driftwood into it, and it gets close to shield brown. So it's kind of my shortcut, and then I'll just continue mixing the driftwood into it. But the other thing that you'd do for a really cracked and faded wood is you'd make it go really gray. So we'll work with that too. I've got my cloudy gray here. I've got a whole bunch of colors that we can play with. And I guess I want to start dark. So let's grab... And it depends on how light you want your wood. How dark you start, it really depends on how light you're planning to go. Unless there's big cracks in a wood surface, the seams between the boards aren't going to be... Oh, another one. Hi, Twistedoma. The seams between the boards aren't going to be fairly heavy. They're gonna, they're gonna fade in a bit. Something that's really cracked, like an old haunted house or boarded up house or an ancient wagon that's been out in the weather, that's going to have really big seams between the boards. But a musical instrument probably won't. So we might not want to go real dark with the lines between our boards on something like this. Ship's decks also can be, they can have pretty big seams between their boards because of all the water and salt and everything. All right, I'm going to make a note. I have to make a note of all the subs since Justin is not with us today. He is stuck in meeting land. So, Otter Mama, thank you for the sub. 8 months. Nice streak. We're up to 4 for this stream. Apparently not having Justin gives us lots of subs. Yay! Hi, Varl. And hello, Pendrake. How is it going? We are doing some wood grain. So I was just talking about the fact that for a musical instrument, usually the seams between the boards are not going to be particularly wide because it's a well cared for, or at least moderately well cared for instrument, depending on how much of a drunkard our bard is, right? But if you're looking at something that's more well cared for, the seams between your boards are not going to be very wide, and so they shouldn't be very dark. Whereas something that will have been out in the weather or out on a battlefield, or like maybe a shield back, I don't mind going really dark with those seams because, they'll have gotten, blood and moisture and dirt and mud and rain and all sorts of stuff on them, so they're more likely to be really marked, to be able to see them. So let's go for lighter wood and see what we can do. So this is actually, this is a mix of about 3 or 4 drops of russet and 2 drops of driftwood. It gives you a really nice kind of warm brown that's can still look polished, doesn't need to look old. You can age it though, it's very versatile. You can age it by highlighting it with mixing in gray. Get the tail end of this loot. And as you can see, this covers actually really well. Russet brown, the other reason I really like russet brown is that it does have high coverage. It's got some good high coverage pigments in it. And it's very versatile brown. It's our equivalent, I've said this before, but russet brown, 91.99, is our equivalent for a painter's burnt umber. So for Artist Burnt Umber. So it's a very, very versatile brown. You can push it a little bit more yellow. You can push it a little bit more red. You can push it darker or lighter. It's nice and saturated, but you can desaturate it with some gray and it still works fine. It's still a nice vibrant color. So let's see here. Can I get the last bit of his loot down under here? There we go. All right, so whatever you're going to do, the color that you start with on wood should be the color of your cracks, not actually the wood. So we're going to go significantly lighter with this wood. This is the color that we're going to leave between the seams in our boards. Because, let me see here. Whoop, 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 whoop. Yeah, while the cat's away. Yeah, there is going to be slight seams on this for where the wood is laid in. Justin is actually in a real ReaperCon meeting, guys. He actually is at Reaper HQ this morning. So this is a for serious ReaperCon meeting where everybody is social distancing. But yeah, so they needed to have obviously since the announcement yesterday, we all need to hustle and figure out how we're gonna do things to make it all fun for you guys. But yeah, good evening, Jenky. Miss Dimp, you may be right. Yeah, Miss Dimp, you've got the conversation just about right. Exactly. So if you look at wooden guitars, you can actually usually see like differences between the boards, right? Especially if they're nice and all varnished and polished up. So I'm going to add more of our driftwood brown. I'm going to do a mixture of 1 drop russet and like 4 drops driftwood. And again, how dark you make these seams is going to age or not age your loot. Like if you make big, dark, jagged seams, it's going to look like old and battered and beat up. I don't think all hell broke loose, Nomad-Zeke. I'm pretty sure that Ron and Adrian would have been discussing it already because, you know, we've all been discussing whether ReaperCon will actually happen. So you know that the people who are actually planning ReaperCon are looking around at other things that are getting canceled and they're going, yeah, just to be safe. Because if we go ahead and we set up a full in-person con, and then we have to cancel at the last minute, that's so much time and money and resources that's been wasted, right? It's a huge letdown for the company. It's a huge money sink because we won't be able to recoup any of those costs. And ReaperCon is not cheap to put on. I mean, there's a reason that we charge for classes. You know, a lot of our classes pay for the convention center and all that. So earlier rather than later. Plus, there's the whole planning aspect for you guys. You want to be able to plan whether you're coming or not or what's going on. And so we really had to hustle and figure something out. So I'm not surprised. I don't think this was a last minute decision or a sudden decision at all. I think that Ron and Adrian and Ed were discussing it and decided that it was the safest way to go. I'm going to get some black out here because I realized I wanted to do the I forget what you call the hollow. It's not the soundboard because that's what this is, but I used to know the names of things on musical instruments, but I no longer do. Back when I actually thought about playing them. Although the closest I ever got to playing an instrument was learning drums from Ed, actually. Because I always wanted to do drums. Like when my parents asked me if I wanted to join band, I said, yeah, I want to play the drums. And they went, no. So, yeah, I could have been a drummer, but no. Oh, good, Twisted Oma, yeah. Well, I'm sure, you know what? I'm sure that Reaper Live is prepared to answer a crap ton of questions about ReaperCon, and that's part of why this meeting is happening, to make sure everybody's on the same page. Yeah, I don't know, Valandar. I don't know if we're going to see refunds, if they're going to honor tickets for this year, if they're going to... I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, a lot of the VIP is swag, and we can still send out swag bags, so that's not a big deal. Yeah, exactly, freestyle. Oh, they've already indicated your attendance fee will be refunded. All right, well, thanks, Vio. Hi, Cornico. Yeah. Right, exactly, Numbad. I mean, we've still got 4 months. We can still plan, right? Good. Thanks, Vio. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, right? I just didn't know if they were gonna, like, you know, refund part of it and still have an admission fee, or if we're just gonna make it a big fun community thing. And if we're gonna make it a big fun community thing, awesome. I'll find out eventually, but probably not. I won't find out very much since I'm not directly involved in running the con anymore. I'll know about what you guys know, unless it has to do with my part of it, which would be like, you know, streaming classes, um, and maybe the competition, the painting competition, since we will have a painting competition, but it will be probably very different from what we usually have. But yeah, I don't expect to know much more than you guys about all this. So I'm just filling in the hollow of the belly there, and I'm just gonna line a little bit. I mixed some russet brown into this black to make it a little softer of a line around the strings. But I do want to line around the strings. Do want to bring out all these details. So lining for those who are new is putting a dark line between where one surface meets another. And especially on a very cartoony model like this, it's okay to use near black. That's what our liner paints are for. This is what our liner paints are for. Because usually you want a very thin line, and to get that you usually need a more fluid paint. So you could just add water to a regular paint, but our liners are made to already be a more fluid paint, and so you can use them near to full strength and get a good thin line still. And you also can thin them and get a more natural, subtle line if you're doing like a historical model where you don't want any heavy lining. But lining around, you can see where I lined around the little bit down here, it generally makes everything stand out a little bit better. Especially on small models, they need a little help sometimes for the contrast. So that's what lining is for. And some people pre-line, but then you have to worry not to cover up your lining when you base coat, so I tend not to pre-line. I tend to paint an area and then line around it. So that's what I did there. And I realized I forgot to paint to base coat the top of this, so I'm going to do that. And I'll probably actually base the entire top of it, even though these frets are probably brass or gold to match his face. I'm going to paint the entire thing because I can always paint over the top of those. And if I'm going to make them gold or brass, then I'm going to be using metallics anyway, and the best way to use metallics is to put an undercoat under them. So that will work into my evil plans quite well, thank you. Just going to make sure we get all of our area base coated here. Let's see here. I don't know, Pendrake. I'm kind of expecting that maybe we'll just make a batch and it'll go out in swag bags. Like, if we do swag bags. Like, this is the thing, right? If we're refunding attendance fees, then I don't know how swag bags are going to work, or even if we're going to do them. So, I mean, maybe we'll refund what people have already done, and maybe we'll have a new ticket price that includes it, or we'll just sell the swag bags online. But if there are swag bags to be bought, then I would expect Drown Nipple Pink to maybe go in a swag bag. But that's up to Ed and Sadie, and up to, you know, all what we're going to be doing about all this. So you could ask Ed. But I see no harm in putting it in swag bags for this is a special ReaperCon after all. We've never done a virtual one, so. But that would definitely be a request that you make of Ed. Ask him if, you know, Drown Nipple Pink can be one of the paints that goes in a swag bag. Inexplicably need more caffeine. Purple Pendrake is a plus, not a minus. Let me see. It is a very important and question. Since I'm no longer working on site for Reaper, it is less of an and question because it's really up to Sadie and Ed at this point. All right, so why do we start with our dark color and then go over the top? Because if you try to draw lines on the surface for your little boards, like if I decide I want to do this, it's hard to get, especially if you're not like, you know, an awesome painter. It can be hard to get a narrow line. Like, inevitably your line will be thicker, right? But the secret here to this. Hold on. Wow, is my thing out of focus again? Stupid camera. Stop it. There we go. Now I can see. So the secret to drawing thinner lines is actually not to draw the lines at all. It's to actually use paint and to narrow the line. So you don't want to draw a narrow line. You want to draw a thicker line. And then you're going to use your base color. And you're just going to come in and make it thinner. Thin it down. And you could get it super thin that way. And a lot easier than if you just try to draw a line. So that's why we start with our dark color. Because then essentially we just paint the boards over the top. And we leave space for the cracks. And we can trim those cracks down super, super thin. Inexplicable purple would be a good color. It is a good band name as well. I wonder why more bands don't use names that are good band names. Like, why do we always get bands that are just like one word names that are kind of like, eh? Let's see here. Or, so, okay, so we're going to go slightly lighter here. And I'm going to do an irregular shape. Because boards tend to be just a little bit irregular, especially in, you know, medieval times. They didn't have, like, all the high-tech saws and stuff that we did. So making it a little wobbly is just fine. And then sketching your next board. You can leave a bit of a big gap. But what you're going to do now is you're going to take your paint and you're going to thin that line down. And if you eclipse part of the line, don't worry about it. You can always try to touch it up a little bit. But you can make a very, very, very thin line that way. Yes, in Magic Dice medieval times. Yeah, I mean, Pendrake, we almost always, we put swag bags up for sale in the online store anyway. So for me, everybody gets, you're refunded however, and then if you want a swag bag, you can go purchase one, just like anybody else who couldn't come to ReaperCon. But again, this is all conjecture. I am not in the inner loop anymore. I am still an employee of Reaper, and I still am involved with ReaperCon on a teaching, and if the painting competition has any form, probably that level. But I don't know any more than you do, so it's all guesswork. So you can make some very nice thin lines this way that are very, very low key, so they don't disrupt anything. You know, they're very subtle. And they look very nice. And then we can do some additional grain all in the middle of these boards too with our next layer. And of course, we would hope that there would not be a knot in the wood if you're, doing a nice instrument. But if you wanted to paint a knot, they usually go around. Pardon me, I have to fix my lining there. Okay, muses, good idea. Muses, these are all mixes of russet brown and driftwood brown. So this first one is about 3 or 4 drops of russet and 2 of driftwood. And then I inverted that here to be 2 drops of russet and 4 drops of driftwood. So it's a very nice kind of neutrally brown. It's still fairly saturated. You can make it weathered by adding in gray very easily. And all that sort of thing. So there we go. So those are 2. I also love this combo for leather. If you leave it darker, for dark leather, I like to use ruddy leather, shade with 9137 black and brown, and then bring it up with driftwood, because you can get a nice dark leather that way. Now, one thing I do want to look up is knotted wood, because I believe that the knot is usually in the middle of the board, but we need to look it up. Whenever you're going to do something natural, remember, you need to look up pictures for visual reference. There we go. Okay, so usually there's a knot followed by a crack, like it's kind of in the middle of the green here. And it swirls around like that, and it's dark, and it's usually lighter around it. So yeah, it's going to be in the middle of the board, and it'll probably come in next time. So if we're going to do a knot, we want to mark it in now. We want to mark it in a little bit darker. Whenever you're trying to make something look like something that actually appears in nature, you always want to keep it Let's see. We'll do one. Let's do one up here. It's going to be quite small since it's since we're doing this to scale and all this. When you're doing larger scale models, you can make much larger knots. So I'm going to just make a little hole there. See the dark spot? Yes, Pendrake. Good. Thank you. Yeah, so my point with using the lighter brown over the darker brown is that you can make much thinner lines for your boards. And also, I'm making the lines very light. They aren't showing up. I'm not using a very dark color for this underlying color because I want this loot to be in good repair. If I wanted, if I used a darker color, it would essentially imply more wear, bigger gaps between the boards because they would be more obvious. So if you're working with like an undead pirate ship deck or something like that, it makes sense to go dark between your boards because they would be, you know, really ratty. Here, we're going to go around our little around our knot. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a line carrying off north of the knot because it's usually a split. So this guy's loot is maybe a little bit beat up now. If we add flaws like this, you definitely send the message of something that is not in great repair. So what we can do, though, is we can fill in the knot a little bit, which will make it look more like a natural feature of the woods. So let's see if I can get this really in focus. Let's see if I can get this close. 1 second. Let me hit that. All right, there we are. So now you can see that tiny little circle that I did right there. That's the little knot. We'll continue to work on this and make it look more. There we go. Sweet. Hello, James Reb. We're doing wood grain. Yeah, I did Sarducci, yesterday. I did the face marble, and then I also did the backside. So I tried a closer marble with this and bigger spaces between the streaks on this one. But we decided we wanted to try a marble dice. So I thought I would, since I've never done marble with metallics before, I thought I would give it a try. Yes. So, all right, cool. Now it's time to go up to our next level. Although I lost a little bit of my wood grain up here. But yeah, it's really hard to draw such a thin line just drawing in your wood grain. That's why I say put your boards on over the top of your grain layer, and then you can thin them down to really nice subtle lines. All right, good. So now we'll go up another step. We'll probably go up to pure driftwood. I might even add a little bit of something else. So let's get that out. Driftwood being 9162. Again, one of my favorite colors for faded wood or leather. I'm also going to add a drop of creamy ivory in, I think, because it's not looking like real light, and I do want it to look a little different. So about 5 drops driftwood, 1 drop of creamy ivory. We'll see how that looks. That's a little bit lighter. You do want a difference between your lights and darks. You can see now that this is a pretty nice lineup of colors I've got in my background. There we go. Nice and sharp. Yeah. Thanks, Sharky. Yeah, Verlina. Yeah, wood grain is easier than you think. I mean, it does help if you look up photo references. So like if I had looked up, wood guitar, I would probably have a very different approach to this, and we might do a paint over on top of it. We'll do that. We'll see. This is a pretty fast topic, so I was looking for other things to do on the stream since Justin will be trapped for a while. And we have to hold out till Justin returns. Actually, let me look at my wood grain again a little bit here. Remember, photo references are your friend when you're trying to do something grainy. And so I'm looking at, various light grains. And there are sometimes pretty extreme streaks, especially around knots. It can get quite light and marbly. But I also don't have a lot of room since this is a 28 millimeter model. So when you're doing this on a 28 millimeter, you have to simplify. You can't do, you know, a really complicated design around the knot. You have barely enough room to do anything around the knot. So the best you can do is go, okay, so it's usually much lighter around the knot. So I am going to integrate that in. And this is where precise brushwork comes in. You do want always to paint on the exhale. You do want to make sure you're relaxed and in a comfortable position in order to paint precisely. This is, and you want to be using a consistent brush stroke that's comfortable for your hand. I'm going to try to do a couple of different little bobbles in the middle of this. This is where we can go a little extra streaky. If we can put in a couple of little lines here on this board, that works. And this is where we could do grain inside of grain. So each of these boards has a seam between it, but then there's also wood grain in the board itself. So like you can see, let me get my thing up. There we go. So you will have striations, you know, and most of this stuff won't actually, you know, there's no way we could paint something this intricate on one of these boards, right? So we have to generalize. But what it comes down to is as you're using your lighter color here, your driftwood plus a little bit of creamy ivory, try to make more than one streak inside each of these boards. And if the streaks intersect, it's not a big deal. I mean, you really don't care if you have a little overlap because strands of wood will often grow together. So you're just trying to kind of create, always go in the same direction as your boards because that's the way they would be cut. And just try to do more than one streak inside each board. And make sure not to go over your lines between the boards. This will also make your between the board lines show up more because you're putting a light color right up next to them. And the edge of the board should definitely be light, the edge of each board. And if your lines are wobbly, it's no big deal. So this is actually a pretty forgiving technique because wood is not going to grow perfectly evenly. There you go. See my little lines? Yeah, because it's figured wood, right, Pendrake? It's so it's pretty, and that's why it's used. I kind of wonder if it affects the sound or if they, if it's a veneer, right? If they use the knotted veneer over the top of like the other wood, or if the knots affect the sound at all. I don't know, right? It's, you always hear that like things like violins, like the construction is so important that even if it's off just a tiny bit, it can really affect the sound. So I kind of wonder if knots in the wood have any effect on sounding guitars. I guess we could Google that. But anyway, medieval dice barred guy definitely has a knotty guitar. Ha 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 ha. See, we've got innuendos all over the place. I blame the Family Guy title. Now, these are not as, like, this is all pretty subtle work, obviously, so you guys can see. Whoop, let's see, there we go. Now we're in focus. Not an electric guitar, that's for sure, D. Clearman. Was wondering about acoustics. Yeah, it is going. That was accidental, but the fact that we're doing the same direction as the dice swirls is kind of funny. You're right. That was subconscious and dictated by the angle of the guitar. So let's do some more awesome little wood grainy things. And then, since we've done this uniformly across all of the face of the guitar, we will then start to highlight based on actual where the light would be falling. So I wanted to get my details in, then I can worry about lighting, which is so funny because it's the exact opposite way that my boyfriend does things. David and I have determined that we are antithetical painters. Like, opposites definitely attract when it comes to painting style because he works like from a totally different first vantage point than I work from. He uses totally different techniques. Like, I smooth at the beginning, he smooths at the end, you know. He works with lighting from the very beginning, and I work with lighting after I've got something down. You know, so it's like we totally, if we ever tag team a seminar in person, it'll be like nonstop arguing over, no, wait, you want to do this first. No, wait. It'd be funny. So now I'm going to take the edge of my brush. I'm just going to kind of hit the line around this. I'm just going to hit the outline of the front of the guitar. This helps me, it's kind of like encapsulate the whole thing. So you can see the seam and makes it more like this is a face of something. Because it definitely provides a nice border to unify the design. So then it makes it look like it's actually set in wood. See how that line goes in? See that light line around the outside? So now it looks like it's a piece of wood because it's got that light line tying it together. Instead of just me painting a design on the face of something. So I'm going to touch this up down here. So I find that's very helpful. Now we can think about lighting. And lighting is going to be probably lighter up here. There's going to be a shadow under here. And I might lighten up the edge of the boards. I might want to pick out the edge of the boards a little bit. So we're going to go up another level with our awesome wood grain, which actually is looking pretty nice. No, I'm sure there are so many 3D crazy printed musical instruments these days. Yeah. Yeah, we are talking about collaborating, David. D. Clearman. We are totally... At this point, we look at when both of us fall in love with a model online, we're like, we need one. But then we look at each other and like, well, do we need two or do we just need one? So I have a lot of Patreon stuff I'm trying to finish by the end of this month because moving disrupted me. But maybe next month we can start seriously working on a collaboration. It's going to be weird though because we work so differently, right? I mean, you can put it up. Pendrake in like the you could link to it or you could put it up in the Discord, I suppose, somewhere. And just tell people it's, you know, similar to similar to what I was doing on stream. I'm gonna mix up a color here, so we'll put Dice Dye down for a moment. Let me get my driftwood over here. I'm just gonna take some, instead of using more paint, I'm just gonna scoop some driftwood mixture into a new puddle. And then we're going to just add a little bit more. I do this a lot where I don't, to keep track of my mixes, I just take some of my previous mix and I add more light color to it. Now, this is where, if we wanted this to look really old and worn, we could add light gray instead of this creamy color. But if we just want it to appear light wood, then we're just going to add the creamy color. We could also go more golden with it, because this creamy ivory does have yellow in it. But it's got more white, so it's going to bleach out this color. And if we decide we want more of a blonde wood, like that picture I showed you, wood does tend to yellow. So I might actually grab some yellow, just any yellow I have to hand, in this case NMM Gold Highlight, because I use this for everything. And I might try dropping one drop in there to see if I can warm it up a little bit so it's more like blonde wood. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. All right. That's nice. And you want to see that it's quite different from your previous color. You do want to add water because at this point, when you're drawing such thin lines, you really need to be using thin paint. You want to keep it somewhat opaque because you want it to show up when you put your super thin lines down. But I'd say I would say 2 to 1. I would say 2 to 1 paint to water. So now you're Frances. Frances. Yes. It's like a long drawn out wrestling commentary or something, your name. All right. We are going to grab our new blonde wood color. And now we're going to concentrate on where the light is falling. So let's see. We want this upper edge definitely to get some light. And probably, it's going to be blocked a little bit by his face. So I am going to pick out that knot, I think, again. So if I stop talking, it's because I'm actually slowly exhaling with control while I do these details, which is a trick for keeping your hand steady. There. And this time I'm going to concentrate on just trying to highlight the top part of certain seams. I do want a lot of light falling like right up in this area, so I don't mind if my highlights are thicker there. But otherwise I'm going to try to stick to the top ends of boards and the top area here that would be getting light, make it significantly lighter. I may also end up glazing. That's another trick to make this all look integrated toward the end. So we'll do that when we get there. Especially if I feel these lines have gone too bright and that I need to tone them back, then I might glaze. So just on the upper edge of each board now, just catching the light just a tiny bit. These would be pretty flush with the front of the guitar, so you wouldn't get a lot, but it lets you add just that little extra bit of dimension. I'd pick up a highlight on the bottom part of this lip because it would fall. We'd have a shadow directly under the strings here, so I will add that in a moment. But I want to get that highlight on there. There we go. And a little bit up here. I missed right there on the board. There. All right. This is looking kind of pretty, actually, at this point. All the real spellings were taken. That's okay, Francis. I get it. Yeah, it's exhaling. You just got to exhale and paint slowly. Painting on the exhale for sure. Never hold your breath unless you've already released all your breath. If you've released all your breath, then you can hold it while you paint. But I'm going to need to rinse out. And whenever you see your tip of your brush kind of getting compromised, that's when you need to rinse it and reload. If you have trouble with your paint coming off the brush, that means you need to thin it more. There we are. Look at that. There we go. We're getting there. All right, now I really want a kind of a soft diffused highlight up here to show that it is hitting the upper part of the face, not just the grains, but the whole thing. So one second, I'm gonna redo this a bit. I wiped out my seam line down there a little bit. Oh, there, it's pretty much there. I might need to reintroduce it with some silly fun. If you screw up a seam line at this point, you're like, oh dear. Just do your best to block it back in. You've already got, this is why I leave all my colors open. So I've got the exact colors I need to touch something up. So I'm going to try to even out that little seam line. My highlight got a little bit too thick there. So just a little bit of brown. Really fine little strokes there. All right, there we are. We fixed it. Yay. All right, now I want it to be lighter up here significantly, and I want it to be darker here, but I don't want to lose my grain. So this is time for glazing. And since my grain is pretty subtle, it may be difficult to have this work, but we're going to try it anyway. So glazing, of course, is using really thin paint. You want it to be colored water. When you paint it over your palette, or if it's light, paint it over your fingernail to get an idea of how strong it's going to be. See, you can see it barely coloring the top of my fingernail, so this is probably a really good, see it there? Right there. This is probably a really good consistency. So I'm going to turn the model upside down because I want to brush it toward the outside edge here, and I want it to be soft stroke, so I'm going across the grain that I previously did. So I'm kind of layering on a glaze at this point. You do not want it to pool. You just want to make this upper part of the guitar just a little bit lighter. And you could go and put a couple of layers on. This is kind of like spot glazing. This is what I call spot glazing, where you're not glazing an entire surface. You're just glazing over a particular part of a surface. And I just want it to go a bit lighter over the whole thing. There. So that it suggests that the upper part of the guitar is in light. See? Like that. And I probably could go a little bit more over here. It also will blend in brush strokes, so it will get rid of some of the detail that you've put in with this wood grain. That's why you want it to be really thin. There, that's better. There, see? The upper edge of the guitar is now plainly in the light, and now we can do an even bigger highlight up there if we want to. We do need to put a shadow in underneath the strings and the frets and things like that. Francis, these guys, because this is the well palette that I love. It's got 28 wells. It's got seven this way, 4 this way. These are small wells, and the small wells are important because the less surface area, the smaller the well, the less surface area you're exposing of the paint. So when you build a big paint puddle, like I do, I tend to use between 6 and 8 drops in each one, and then I add water. So I actually am making quite a deep well. And when you do that, that means you have a lot of paint underneath the surface, and there's not that much paint exposed to the air. And that means that the paint will not dry quickly at all. It'll actually stay wet for quite a while, especially if you do what I just did. If you see your paint is starting to dry out, just kind of keep an eye on it. And if it is starting to dry out, just add a drop of water and then remix everybody up, and you'll be good. Like, I'll put an extra drop of water in each paint, mix it in, and then I'll put like drops of water kind of around it, saran wrap this whole thing, and it'll be fine overnight. So that if I need my colors the next day, I actually have that up on my shelf. I have 2 of these palettes, and one of them is for my personal projects, and one of them is for stream. So I actually have 2 personal projects going in a single palette. One is on the upper part, one is on this part. You could also do left and right. That way you just peel up the saran wrap on one side and just keep working. And I have kept paint good for almost a week by using the saran wrap trick. I would paint every other day on a project and just, add a little bit more water and saran wrap it at the end of a night. And I was able to keep my colors good for a very long time. So yeah, a flat tile will dry the fastest, or even a one with large wells, because at that point you've got, unless you're using huge amounts of paint in it, it's going to be a real thin, real shallow puddle. But because these are smaller, they can be deeper puddles. Less surface area means less evaporation, and then they stay good for a very long time. So this is kind of key for my whole painting style, because I do thinner paint and I do very precise stuff, and I want a very precise paint consistency because I'm working with layering and textures and smooth blends and all that. I want my paint to be at a certain consistency, and I want it to stay there while I'm working with it. And this palette is key for that. I could not do this on a wet palette. Wet palette, when you start thinning your paint, right away, what does it do? It wicks that water down into the sponge because it's trying to equalize, it's osmosis. It's trying to equalize the pressure on both sides of the paper. And so you can't really do a thin mix and have it stay at that consistency when you're using a wet palette. So if you're having problems with blending using layering, then you're using a wet palette, that's probably a lot of the problem. You could give a well palette a try, get your paint to exactly the consistency you need, and it'll stay there. That's the greatness. Now, the thing the wet palette is great for is if you work with thicker paint, because this palette is not going to keep thicker paint wet. It's very much a thinner paint palette. So if you work with thicker paint, if you do a lot of wet blending, if you love to do spot blends and you like to leave brush strokes and do textures, then your wet palette is your baby. And if you're going to glaze, then you need to learn to spot glaze, where you're pretty much mixing. Every brushful is a new brushful, and you have to hand mix your glazes at that point every time you apply them. So each palette type, the total there, guys, total takeaway is both palette types are very good, but they're very good at different things, and they're okay at other things. So when you kind of develop your painting style and you figure out how you really like to paint and how it works for you, try both palettes and see. You're probably going to gravitate toward one or the other. But don't assume either of them is a miracle worker. They're good for different things. Yeah, it is. Especially when you thin your paints a bit, right, Hydromain? So I'm... Oh, you like it? Thank you, Khalees Blade. I like my wood grain quite a bit. Now we're going to do shadow. We're going to do a shadow the same way we did the highlight, although I'm going to add a tiny bit of this black to my russet brown mix. Let me pull it down so you guys can see. You're going to add a bunch of water. You can see that it's... Here, let me glaze it down. There we go. I'll lift this up so you guys can see the consistency. All right, so glaze consistency. You can see this one was really just colored water, and that's what you're aiming for. You really just want colored water. When you pull it over the palette, you should, if it's not pooling, because remember you don't want it to pool, you should be able to barely see it. I can barely see that, so that is a perfect glaze. you are wanting to build up levels very smoothly and gently. You don't want to do a huge dark shadow that you can't control. So again, we're going to be spot glazing, which is more like layering with a glaze. So I'm going to come out it from the top, and I'm going to try to put a dark shadow under my strings and my guitar here. And this is going to take a couple of layers to build up. I'm glad, Crispies. I'm glad that it's working for you. You know, like I said, it's not that the wet palette isn't a good tool. It's a good tool for very specific things, and everybody should try both and see which one they gravitate toward. So, all right, let me get this up here. So I've got a little bit of a dark shadow there, but I could make it darker. I'm going to make sure I keep it very narrow. Just going to build up these little layers, very soft, very light touch, very little paint on my brush. You never want to see pooling. You just want to build it up. I could also make this just a little bit stronger for the area right under the strings, because I want that shadow. But I don't want much of one, because that's a very shallow area, right? It wouldn't be a big shadow. And you're going to know, see, there you go. Can you see it? Can you see that the area right under those strings is a bit darker? So that's starting to carry our illusion of three-dimensionality now. It's starting to really, really come out and look good. So let's do it one more time. The other thing that I could do to emphasize this, got a little bit heavy-handed there. If you get a little bit heavy-handed, grab some water and gently scrub it up. You can fix it if you're fast. If you're not fast, don't worry about it. You're just going to have to do a little bit of a repaint over. Remember, you can always grab a little bit of your previous color that you used and lighten this area just a tad so that you get yourself back. The other thing you could do is add a darker line underneath this area. So we could grab some of this russet brown mixed with black, and we could put a harsher line directly under this area to imply a heavier shadow. So you can also just control your lining, the darkness or lightness of your lining. Just got to be careful to imply a heavier shadow there. There we go. Now we've got a light and a dark. It's looking pretty good. All right, let me see here. Yeah, I mean, exactly, Orkluck, right? If the wet palette works for you, use it. I mean, it's just there's specific things that the wet palette is very good at, and then it'll make some things a little harder for you. Whereas, you know, there are also some things that the well palette is very good at, but it will make some things harder. Like doing spot wet blend on the well palette is very difficult. You know, I do it because I've worked with this tool for a long time, and I'm pretty confident with it. But if you like to do a lot of little wet blends on your projects to get some quick blending without layering, then yeah, the well palette is not a good tool for that, but the wet palette is an excellent tool for that. So I don't believe in dissing any way to paint. Like when I hate it when people say things like F smoothness, or, you know, when I know they're trying to just say, hey, you don't have to do it this way, you can do it a different way, but I don't like the tude. I don't like that. It's like never diss anybody's way to paint, right? If it isn't for you, it isn't for you. That's cool, right? But I prefer to like really point out the pluses in one way to paint versus another one, instead of really saying, oh, well, that's terrible for that. You shouldn't use it for that. Maybe that person is fine with it. You know, you should never, don't judge anybody's way to paint. Everybody does it differently, and we all look great. So, let's see. Actually, Francis, it won't wipe out. Hey, Crispies, yeah, I did actually hand paint this wood grain. That was today's episode. So the glaze does need to dry between layers, but when you're putting it on, remember, you're just putting a layer on and you're not letting it pool. So it dries pretty much instantaneously. And as long as your previous layer is dried, acrylic paint, even when it's thinned, is still going to seal the minute that it is laid down. It's not like a watercolor. You could scrub it up if you go at it right after you lay it down. But like I could scrub at this with my wet brush right now, and it ain't coming up. So one layer, one gentle brush stroke of a glaze or two is not going to bring up any of this previously done work. If you find that your paint is peeling up, when you put wet paint down on top of it, you've got one of two problems. One, you're not using Master Series. You're using a paint that comes with a much softer base. Some of the softer bases do peel up much more easily. Two, you could have thinned your paint too much so that you lost its adhesion properties, and so that's why it's coming up. If you put too much water in paint, you can disrupt it, and essentially it will be scrubbable. You won't have enough resin in there to truly cure it. And that's rare. Like, I can thin Master Series down way thin, and that glaze, I could probably scrub it up if I threw a bunch of water at it and a stiffer brush. I could probably lose that. But just for this, it's not going to come up. So, alrighty. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Pendrake, I don't think I need to because I love this one. This one is about perfect. Like, maybe if the wells were a tiny bit smaller, it would be even more optimal. But I also like that they're this size because my thumb fits in it, right? So when I'm scrubbing out my palette, it's easy to scrub out. If you made narrower wells, it'd be much harder to clean. And part of the reason I love this palette is that it is very hard to clean. So I've just got, or easy to clean, sorry. And so it's just, this is about perfect. I don't think I could design a better one. It's lovely. Hey, Michael. Yeah, it's good to see you. I'm sorry I missed your stream yesterday. I got totally distracted and had to finish Patreon stuff. And so, I was very sad when I realized that 2 p.m. had come and gone and I was still like, had my head stuck in like writing stuff. But yeah, thank you. I was working on wood grain today. I still think this one's a little light, so I think I'm going to take it down a little bit. In fact, I may just glaze it down. I may glaze down this whole area because this particular board is bothering me. It's really sticking out. But yeah, so we did the swirly dice thing yesterday, Michael, and then we did guitar today. We did the lute. So let's take some of our dark brown glaze and blend over the top of that. See, boom. When I put that whole spot glaze down, you can see how heavy it is. Now, while it's still wet, I can take some water and lighten it a little. But doing that really, see now the light really comes up here. In fact, maybe even a little bit too much. So maybe I'll brush a little glaze over it there. There we go. So see how glazing can really hit it. Now it's going to be more dark when it's wet. So when it dries, it's going to come up. But you can still see the big difference that gave. And we haven't lost our wood grain. We still have all of our texture. We have our highlights. I probably have to re-highlight just this little bit. This is the power of glazing. I was able to suggest the tilt and dimension just from one brush stroke. Thank you. Yeah, Dick Blick comes with a guarantee, actually, Clever. So when you buy a brush from Dick Blick, if it comes bad, you can contact their customer service and they will send you a new one. They do their best. They keep the tubule on. They try to package it in a long, thin tube of paper or packing material. But you do sometimes have the tubule come loose in shipping, and we do sometimes get a damaged brush. But Dick Blick is great about their guarantee. Yeah, Sarduki, the wet palettes, like I said, and it depends, right? If you have too much water on your wet palette, you could try going with less water in your sponge, and that would give you the benefit of keeping the paint wet without getting everything too watery. So there's definitely, wet palettes are just like any tool. A wet palette can be useful for so many different things, and it's really, you can control the amount of water, you can control what paper you're using, you know, and what sort of surface is on your sponge, and, you know, all of that will affect what you're doing. Like if you have a lot of water coming up through your sponge, then you can glaze with your wet palette really well. So then that makes it better for thinner applications for a bit. But if you want to control, if your wet palette is too watery, try just using a damp sponge. Try a little less water in your palette. All of these tools take time to learn and optimize, but whatever is easiest for you and whatever works best for you is, you know, whatever works best for your style is always the best choice. Don't close your mind to other things though. They may surprise you. Yeah, Dick Blick does have excellent service on all their products. I agree, Doug Sunseth. Yes, when my tubule comes loose, right? Tubule, it's a technical term, I swear. So there we go, guys. We did wood grain on the guitar, and I'm actually very happy with it. I was not expecting it to turn out so well, but here it is. It turned out really well, and I'm very happy. I've got my highlight, and it looks good, and yeah, I like the guitar. I like the guitar a lot. Yeah, I could put another secondary little highlight down there right beneath there, I suppose. I'd have to grab some glaze. We're kind of filling time a little bit because Justin is in a meeting. So he will emerge and come to speak to us, and then we will know that we are done, but we're not done yet. So maybe I'll do a tiny little spot glaze here to kind of lighten this area around the panel. Get a little bit more dimension down there. I don't want to create any lines, so I have to be careful. Once again, if I come in right after I lay it down, I can scrub it up with a little bit of water, but otherwise I'm kind of stuck. So with spot glazing, you really have a limited period of time to scrub up your mistakes if that's what you're going to try to do. At least with MSP. With paints that have cheaper bases or bases that are more rubbery, you have more time, but they're also more fragile. So it's kind of a trade-off. All right, so we put a little bit, we put a little bit of highlight. There we go. Now I really like it. Yeah, we needed that. We needed that slight highlight there around the middle, and now it looks awesome. I'm very happy with this now. Oh, does Blake ship them in plastic tubes now? I haven't ordered from them for a while, D. Clearman, so that's great if they're using tubes. Let's see here. It's not over till the Justin sings, or at least till the Justin shows up, right? Yeah, thanks, Tristadoma. Yeah, it's all just about your highlighting and your shading to get a 3D effect, right? You're suggesting, you figure out, and this is where it's important to think about your light. This is where David's correct, my boyfriend is correct, is like, always think, like if he was painting this, I bet he would have started by blocking in a big light area and going down here and doing more shadow and then doing another light area here. And then he would have done all of the texturing. He would have worked it all in after the fact. Whereas I started with the texturing and then I added the lighting. And that is the big dichotomy. That's why it's so interesting to be like painting with him in the evenings, because the way we tackle projects is completely antithetical. So it's very interesting, and it makes me want to try kind of the way that he does things just to give it a shot and see if it changes up my painting a bit, right? That's always good. That's why it's good to like look at other people's painting and try to figure out if you want to try something new and push yourself a little bit. Oh, your last Series 7 game in tube? Boom. But yeah, so I think I really gotta love it. All right, so well, I guess I can do the neck here a little bit. Well, we're waiting for the Justin to come and save us. So exciting announcement for those who missed it yesterday is ReaperCon is going virtual. I'm sure that a lot of you got emails already. I'm kind of excited. I can stream a class. It was going to be kind of a question mark what I was going to do with Kiri during ReaperCon, because both David and I were going to go, and we don't really have a dog boarding place, and plus there's all this social distancing. So virtual con actually is okay for me, because I don't have to worry about my doglet. I can, stay home and stream stuff for you guys. But I'll have to think about how to have some of my classes translate for online. Maybe I'll try to figure out a color theory online class. That could be fun. I'm just going to block in these little frets up here in dark while we're hanging out. Because if I want to make them metal, then I want a dark base coat on them. Let's see here. But yeah, Justin is going to return and send us into a raid environment at the minute he notices that it's actually time to come back up here. But we probably have another 5-10 minutes. Color theory and color selection. Give everybody a copy of the random color encounter table. Although I may tweak it a little bit. There. A little darker there. Let's see. How will I do my strings? Do I want my strings? My strings are probably... I'll probably paint them all dark, and then I'll do some highlighting. Let me see. Let's get a dark base on these strings. It can be a little thinned. We don't care. Of course, now you got to be careful. You don't want to hit, any of your awesome wood grain that you did. So be careful. Take it slow. Don't get impatient. Oh, thanks for the gift sub, Clever. And Anki, you got a gift sub. I'm going to make another hash mark. That's 5 subs for the stream, guys. Thanks so much. I'll be sure to tell Justin so we can get toward our next AMA. Yeah, I would like a brush carrier of some sort. Mine is very kind of like ghetto right now. Just using a tackle box holder thing. Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, I didn't know doc cams were... I guess it makes sense that document cams are selling like crazy right now because it really does give you the best picture if you're doing online stuff. So there we go. Now you guys can see me. I keep forgetting I focused it so close so that you could see all the tiny wood grain. But yeah, I do love my doc cam. Like, it has its hiccups every once in a while where Discord doesn't want to acknowledge it, but in general, it's doing quite well. Just blocking in all the strings dark, so we don't have a big unpainted face. And let's see here. I guess he'd probably have like catgut strings. He wouldn't have metal strings probably on his guitar. So maybe I'll just do kind of a stripy pattern. Yeah. Yes, I do have a tackle box, and I do decorate it with stickers. So we have lots of stickers from past cons. So I'm gonna try something. Yeah, you don't have to ditch your daughter's birthday to go to ReaperCon. Everybody should be trying to get better, Clever Crow. That's the right attitude. All of us are trying to get better at everything. Growth and expansion. Stagnation is bad. I'm just going to do little kind of diagonal, kind of stripy lines on this. I had that idea. I guess because the old guitar chords that I remember were done in kind of striped, they were wrapped in kind of striped cloth or plastic. My dad used to play acoustic guitar when I was a kid. So maybe if I just put a little bit of diagonal striping on this, it gives it a little visual. Oh yeah, that looks good actually. Little diagonal stripes. But yeah, I was just looking at somebody's work on Facebook the other day and just was blown away by how good the faces were. Kirill is like that too. It's amazing, realistic faces. So now I'm thinking I might have to up my face game because I've been painting so many busts and I really love busts. So I am thinking that might be a thing. That might be my next little push as far as like picking up a new technique or a new technique set or a new focus. Try to do some hyper realistic faces. One of my art teachers in high school was a super realist painter. Like, he did stuff that looked like photographs, and you were just like, in a way it was bad because none of us kids could even hope to relate to his art style. Like, none of us had the technical ability to even approach it. So when he, it was just like we couldn't even get close. So it was a little intimidating. Good. Oh, hello, Althai. Good to see you. Yeah, I kind of chose the diagonal stripes because it's how I remember guitar strings when I was a kid. My dad used to play acoustic. I remember them being like wound in thread or cloth or something and having a kind of a pattern on them. So it did actually turn out to make it look like there's some vibration, which is fantastic. And it makes it more interesting, right, than just strings. I do think I do need to highlight down the middle, though, where my highlight is. So I need to go lighter. But, yeah, I'm very happy with how the little lute turned out, actually. It turns out that if you give me, if I have wood grain as a topic and I know that I have to fill up at least an hour, I actually take my time and produce something that looks okay. So I'm going to take a brighter highlight here, and I'm going to look at, remember we've got highlights here, guys, and that highlight also translates down here. That means these little arrows are going to be a little lighter. So let's bring in a little lighter area there, and maybe one up there, maybe a little bit there, maybe a little bit there. These guys can be lighter too. Got a little bit too thick paint on my brush. Got to get, there we go, much better. So those guys can be lighter than the other guys. There. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's good. That works. So there we are. There's our little dude with our little wood grain. Hopefully Justin will appear from the ether soon. Oh, thank you for rating us, Red Wolf. Yeah, we are currently finishing up the wood grain on this little loot, on this little high roller dice bard from Reaper. It's a bones model. I think was it Bobby who sculpted all these guys? I think it was. And so we have a whole adventuring party of little dice guys. Somewhere around here is my D8 Ranger, but I'm not sure where he ran off to. But yeah, so I did the swirly dice pattern yesterday, and today I did the wood grain on the loot. I like to use each of these guys for more than one tutorial, so. Oh yeah, cookie sheets for armies. Gosh, I remember. Do you magnetize them, Doug? So they stick to the cookie sheet? Because I always thought that was so smart. People who had magnetized movement trays and stuff like that. I never had the patience to sit down and do that for my armies. But yeah, there you go, guys. We could probably maybe we can make the knot a little darker since we have a little time. We should have a Justin at any time. And if not, I can text him. But yeah, so looking at our knot reference from earlier, the knot can be quite dark. Normally they are darker. So I think I'm going to darken up our little knot up here on the top just a little bit. I'm going to come in and shade around it with a little bit of a darker color. It'll make it stand out a little bit more. I'm going to grab just a little bit of the black and russet brown to mix with regular russet brown. I'm going to try to this is where the fine point comes in. Let's see. I don't want it to come out too much. That was maybe a little bit too much. So now I'm going to refine it because I filled in a little bit too much of the space. This is where the fine brush control is definitely useful. I just want it a little bit darker. A little bit darker around that knot. So there. So that it stands out just a little bit more. That's what I wanted. I think I lost a little bit of my lower edge there, so I'm going to try to get that. There we go. There. Now our knot stands out a little bit more now. Might be a little bit much. I might need a little higher highlight on the... Now I'm really nitpicking. Well, I think I'm going to text Justin and remind him that the world exists, because in the ReaperCon meeting, it sometimes doesn't. So let me see. Reminder, ending stream soon. I will text him and summon the Justin. Assuming that he can actually get this. Assuming they're not in the meeting room, which has no internet. Oh, it was delivered. So yeah, it's going to pop up on his phone. Good job. Hopefully he'll see it. Yeah, rare earth magnets seem to be what people are switching to. Yeah, and magnetic painting handles, that's a good idea. Yep. Yeah, it's really nice. And the rare earth magnets have a nice, they're very solid connection. They're real strong, so that would be more than adequate to hold most figures. All right, let's do a little highlight on the bottom part of this. We might have a very long stream today if Justin abandons us, guys. I might have to start painting something else. All right, just wanted a little bit more highlight down on the underside of that knot. There we go. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that, actually. That's cool. Turned out better than I thought. This is my first time to try some of this stuff. I do a lot of like innovating on stream with you guys, actually, because I'm always like, I've never taught this before. How do I want to do it? You know? just going to lighten up this area up here. And we'll see if we get a Justin eventually. And if not, maybe I'll start painting his hat. Because why not, right? If I'm hanging out on stream, I'm getting paid for it, so we can just hang out, do things. I'll be very tired at the end of it. It is keeping me from working on my Patreon stuff, but that's all right. Not too alarmed yet. If Justin disappears for another half hour, then I'll be alarmed. Then I'll wonder if he was killed and eaten, or buried out back.
Afternoon, cool cats and
there
kittens.
You are! Yay, we summoned him by talking about, like, you know, him being put 6 feet under. We thought you might have died. We thought...
No, it's a very, very intense meeting about it.
Yeah, I figured. That's why I thought that might have come down to, like, you know, guns and pistols and swords and things, and... Yes.
Yes, so everyone here, make sure, and I'll tell everyone this in Sadie's stream too, make sure you guys come tonight with your ReaperCon questions.
Yay, good. A bunch of people were already putting together a bunch of ReaperCon questions for Reaper Live. You know, I should almost watch Reaper Live tonight just to hear, just to make sure that I get all the answers so that I can answer questions on stream. All right. Because 6 o'clock Central is for... Yeah, do you have a raid for us?
I will find one real quick. Thank you, Red Wolf, by the way, for the raid of 3 earlier.
Yes, I thanked him. And we got 5 subs today, Justin, so write down 5 subs.
Awesome. So going forward, too, I'm going to go ahead and set this expectation now, because I'm going to probably have to say this over the course of the next, you know, however many weeks.
Mm-hmm.
My involvement in the shows is going to be basically non-existent, because as you guys know, we will be planning this con, and it's going to take a lot of time.
Yep, and Justin is the main man. Like,
correct.
He is Digital Man, so he is our link to the interwebs. I'm pretty much sure that Reaper is, like, actually connected to the interweb through Justin at this point. All right, guys.
Thankfully, I want to say that over the course of the next couple of months, I will have plenty of help, I hope. Not a help, I know, because John and I are going to be working together on the putting together of the social media stuff for it, as well as the organization. Little bitty tidbit here, a little bitty spoiler amount. We're probably going to have a ReaperCon Discord, guys. More information about that to come. But that's a little bitty shred of info for my RTB pro tips peeps. Because, you know, you guys are my favorite. Don't tell anyone.
Awesome. Did you see our loot that we painted today, Justin?
That is pretty fantastic. I'm not going to lie.
Yay!
Did you put is that a hand, is that a knot in the wood right there that you did yourself?
Yes.
That is crazy. That is so cool.
All right. I'm glad you like it. Yay. I was thinking it turned out pretty well, too. Awesome. So, we had fun. We were getting a little worried about you just because I was, like, done. And I was like, I hope he comes back soon. If not, I have to start painting the hat. But yeah, so, all right, cool. Let's see. Oh, I see. PaizoCon Online is doing that, too. Well, I'm sure Ron is watching what Paizo is doing as well. And we're kind of looking at, you know, at what other cons are doing to inform our own process. So, all right, cool. So who are you going to raid?
Well, let me see here.
I'm going to go back to Facecam and just chat with you guys. There we go. But yes, thank you all for tuning in. While we find somebody awesome to raid, remember to spread the Reaper love. I hope you enjoyed our wood grain, even though it had a suspect title, our wood session.
Oh, yeah. Did our audience like that title?
I don't know. I pretty much blamed Family Guy for stealing a lot of my brain cells, and I'll never get them back. But I'm not sure if they enjoyed it or not.
Awesome. Okay. That's all I can hope for.
Yeah, totally go back and watch the VOD, Paul John's Life. It was fun. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and thank you for the 5 subs. We a sub for the show is a vote for the show. Tells everybody that you like the show. Lets the bosses know that we should keep doing all this.
All right, you can go ahead and start your outro now.
All righty.
You know, your rundown. We're going to be rating Jimmy the Brush.
Jimmy, all right, let's go get Jimmy some Reaper love, you guys. See you tomorrow morning. It'll be Friday, end of the week. Woo, exciting. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Keep being awesome, guys. We love you. Spread the Reaper love, and we will talk to you. I'll actually talk to you guys at 3 for Sadie's show, and then tonight, spread the word. It's going to be a pretty big, I think, a pretty big Reaper live episode because we are going to be discussing ReaperCon and everything ReaperCon. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can because I'm sure you guys have millions of them. So tell all your friends to show up tonight, and we'll have a big powwow. Thanks, guys.